Discipline is easier than motivation. Have you ever noticed how motivated people often quit while disciplined people keep moving forward? It sounds backwards, huh? Because motivation feels powerful. It's exciting, it gives you energy, it makes you feel like you're finally about to change your life. But here's the strange part. Some of the most motivated people I have ever met never actually built anything meaningful. And some of the most successful people I know rarely talk about motivation. A few years ago, I found myself caught in the same trap. I was consuming everything: financial videos, productivity content, success stories. Every video left me feeling inspired, ready to take action, ready to change everything. And for a day or two, I usually did. Then work got busy, life happened, energy dropped, and suddenly that motivation disappeared. What shocked me wasn't that motivation faded. What shocked me was how quickly it faded. One week I felt unstoppable. The next week I felt completely disconnected from the same goals. And that's when I realized something important. The problem wasn't ambition. The problem was that I was relying on motivation to carry responsibilities it was never designed to carry. Because motivation is a feeling, and feelings change. Which raises an important question here. If motivation comes and goes, how do people make progress for years? How do they build businesses, grow investments, create additional income streams, improve their finances consistently? The answer isn't more motivation, it's discipline. But not discipline in the way most people think. Because when people hear the word discipline, they imagine struggle, willpower, sacrifice, forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. And honestly, that sounds exhausting. But real discipline is something different. Real discipline is removing the need to make constant decisions. Think about it this way. Imagine you're trying to get fit. Every day you wake up and ask, should I exercise today? You've already created a problem because now you're negotiating with yourself. And humans are terrible negotiators when comfort is involved. But if you've already decided every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 6:30 p.m., I train, the decision is gone. You simply execute. That's discipline. Not effort, structure. And structure is far easier than motivation. This reminds me of a lesson from Suits, the series. Harvey Specter looked confident because people assumed he always knew what to do. But what made him effective wasn't confidence. It was preparation, systems, standards. He removed uncertainty before pressure arrived. And that's exactly what discipline does. It removes uncertainty before life gets complicated, which it often does. Financially, this becomes even more important because most working professionals don't struggle because they are lazy. They struggle because they are mentally exhausted. After an 8 or 10-hour workday, your brain has already made hundreds of decisions. Emails, meetings, deadlines, conversations, problems. Then someone says, now go build extra income. The challenge isn't capability. The challenge is decision fatigue. And this is where motivation fails. Because motivation expects you to feel inspired after you're already mentally drained. Discipline simply says, this is what we do. And that's why it's easier. Now let's make this practical. Imagine two people want to improve their finances. The first person waits until they feel motivated. When they feel inspired, they watch financial content, research opportunities, create plans. maybe even start something. But when motivation disappears, everything stops. The second person creates a simple system. Every weekday, 8:30 p.m., 30 minutes, same process, same structure. Some days they feel motivated. Some days they don't. But the system runs anyway. 6 months later, the difference becomes obvious. Not because one person had better opportunities, not even because one person was smarter, but because one person depended on feelings. The other depended on structure. And structure wins almost every time. This is where most people misunderstand wealth building. They think success comes from intensity, massive effort, huge bursts of productivity, but wealth is rarely built that way. Wealth is usually built through repetition. Small actions repeated consistently for a long time. Investing works this way. Business works this way. Building additional income streams works this way. Even relationships, by the way, work this way. The biggest financial outcomes often come from boring actions repeated consistently. And boring doesn't sell well online. But boring creates results. Think about a series like Money Heist. Everyone remembers the dramatic moments, the action, the tension, the chaos. But the heist only worked because of something less exciting: planning, preparation, structure. The exciting moments got the attention. The disciplined preparation created the outcome. Financial success works the same way. People celebrate the visible results, the business growth, the investments, the additional income. But what they don't see are the thousands of disciplined decisions behind those actions. And this is why financial education matters so much. Because discipline becomes so much easier when you understand why you're doing something. It's easier to save when you understand compound growth. It's easier to invest when you understand long-term wealth creation. It's easier to build income-producing assets when you understand the difference between active income and scalable income. Knowledge creates clarity, and clarity strengthens discipline. This is exactly why the 3C method begins with financial education first. Not because information alone creates success, because clarity removes confusion. When people understand where they are trying to go, they stop chasing every shiny opportunity. They stop reacting emotionally. They stop switching direction every month. And that's where discipline becomes sustainable. First comes clarity. You know what you're building. Then comes control. You create rules and structure around your behavior. And finally comes consistency, the repeated execution that produces results over time. Now, most people try to start with consistency, but consistency without clarity eventually collapses. And clarity without control creates distraction. The three must go together. Now, here's the part most people don't expect. Discipline actually creates freedom. At first, that sounds ridiculous because discipline feels restrictive, rules, schedules, structure. But the opposite is true. A lack of discipline creates chaos. Chaos creates stress. Stress creates poor decisions. And poor decisions reduce freedom. Discipline creates stability. Stability creates progress. Progress creates options. And options create freedom. That's why discipline isn't the enemy of freedom. It's the pathway to it. Now, if you've been telling yourself, I just need more motivation, consider a different possibility. Maybe you don't need more motivation at all. Maybe you need fewer decisions. Maybe you need more structure. Maybe you need a system that works even when you don't feel like working. Because motivation is temporary, discipline is repeatable. And repeatable behaviors are what build wealth. In the end, the professionals who make progress are rarely the most motivated. They're the ones who can execute clearly, under control, consistently. And once you understand that, you stop chasing motivation and start building systems. That's when everything changes.